Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Maleeka Hollaway. She helps individuals and companies grow their brand influence, awareness, and engagement. Maleeka, welcome to the show.
So much, Kevin, for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what we're going to get into today, a lot of people probably know they need to do it, don't know how to do it, and don't maybe necessarily realize the full importance of it. But maybe before we get into all that stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Oh, absolutely. I am from a little small city in the South called Atlanta.
Oh, pretty small, yeah. Sure, people maybe haven't heard of it.
Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia. And it's so funny because every time, I meet people at events or, networking things, or sometimes just small gatherings and meetups, people go, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm here from Atlanta." Like, "Oh my gosh, you're a native?" Like, everybody here they're transplants. Like, it's really rare that we meet one of you and they're like, can I touch you? You're a native. So yeah, I am here from Atlanta. I'm definitely a Southern girl, been here pretty much all my life. But also being here gives me a lot of different perspectives because literally the whole world comes through Atlanta. So
sure.
That's where I'm from. And I get a lot of the way I move, with everything being fast paced. We're not like New York City where we never sleep.
Sure.
But we're like LA, where it's halfway relaxed, halfway work, always some type of play going on.
That's awesome. No, I've only been to Atlanta once. I really liked it. It's cool. Well, what I found really cool about it is obviously when you go in the city, you feel like you're in a big city. But the second you get out of the city, you have these like lush trees and kind of like water. It's almost like you see in kind of the movies. Once you get out of the city, right? It's like this beautiful kind of
the
landscape,
suburbs. Yep.
Right? Yeah, right. And then your house is literally right there, and you're just like, "Wow, this is really nice and peaceful." Right?
Yeah.
It was so quiet and peaceful. I don't know.
After you sit through the traffic for about 2 or 3 hours.
Exactly.
As well.
Exactly. So you know. So you went to university a few times. What did you take and why?
Yeah, I said I've been in Atlanta all my life, and I've been in the South all my life because I was literally in Huntsville, Alabama for 10 years.
Okay.
Got an undergraduate degree from Alabama A&M University in English with a concentration in telecommunications or communications arts. Okay. And then as soon as I got that degree, I went on and enrolled in a master's program. Same university, but I got a master's degree in communication specialist with a concentration in business and public relations. And then, of course, right now, I'm in a doctoral program. So around this time next year, you'll be able to call me Dr. Hollaway.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's in business administration, and my concentration is strategy and innovation. So it's all about how to push businesses forward, like what's new in technology or what's new in communications that allow businesses to continue to grow and to be sustainable. So I'm definitely a professional student. And I always believe that in order to, I say this in quotation marks in the air, in order to be an expert, you have to be a student. You have to continuously be a student to perfect, even though I don't think you ever can really perfect it, but to perfect your craft or to be a contributor to your industry, you have to always be a learner. And so, although when I finish this degree, I'm done. Like after I get doctor in front of my name, I'm done with that part of formal education. But I'm sure I will always probably, do some type of certification or enroll in some type of program just to make sure I keep my skills sharpened.
No, I think that's actually really good advice, right? Because you're right. You don't. Well, obviously. Education is important. How you get that, whether it's from traditional methods or online or a bit of both, can be up for debate. But I think the whole idea of continuous learning makes sense, right? Like you hear people sometimes always say they read a book a week or a few a month, that kind of thing. I think can be what at least I think a lot of people would consider continuing your education. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I read a lot of books as well. I write a lot of books for other people.
Sure.
So
Nice.
I'm, absorbing their information while I'm reading or writing. But one thing I found is that, people go, sometimes, you have to get out of student mode and get into learning or get into implementing some things.
Right.
And I'm like, well, why can't you do both at the same time?
Yeah, interesting.
Why can't you be learning and implementing and tweaking and, using the information that you have? Because we all know that when you're in school, whether it's grade school, college, university, professional, continuing education, the things a lot of times that you learn in school, when you get out and you try to implement them in that way, it doesn't work.
Sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
So, you have to find your own way. And so I think that in continuing to learn and also tweak kind of what you know and what you do to fit, I think you kind of just set yourself up for success in that way.
No, I 100% agree. So you've worked throughout majority of the time you've been in school, if not all of it. You've started and co-founded a ton of companies. Do you want to walk us through that journey with maybe some highlights along the way up until kind of what you're doing today?
I played with the idea of being like a full-time entrepreneur, business owner, on and off.
Okay, sure.
For about 5 years, and probably for the last 2, I've been doing it, completely full-time, haven't really looked back. Because being a student, it takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And then also, being a mother, it was like, how do I balance and juggle and make everything happen? Although I was doing it all along, I think we all get to the point where we go, how do I make this work? As if we're not already doing it. And
Fair
so
enough.
When I initially got into business, I don't even remember what undergrad year I was in, but I was just doing a lot of editing and ghostwriting. Then I took the steps to actually incorporate the business and get legit with the state. But then because I'm a natural writer and I love to read, I got bored really easily.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm making money. I love doing this, but I'm bored. It's not a challenge. It started to feel like work.
Sure.
And so it's like, I'd go work my job and then, start work, get off, go home, try to work on, someone's, book baby or whatever it is I'm writing.
Sure.
And it just felt like a continuation of work. And so I decided, all right, what else can I do? And through branding and promoting my business and, some of my personal story and sharing it on social media, on speaking stages or whatnot, I started to realize like, hey, someone told me that, I was doing publicity for myself. And I was like, no, I'm just talking about what I do. And they're like, no, you're getting these media placements for yourself. You've done it for some other people just by helping them. You actually do public relations. So I was like, well, let me look into that. And that's when I went back to school and really completely just rebranded the business. So we separated, and the writing company is still there.
Okay.
But the main company that I have is the branding and PR agency, which is the official Maleeka Group. Most people call it the OMG because that's what the logo is.
Right.
And so it wasn't one of those things where I just woke up and like, oh, I want to be a publicist. This is my life's work. Right. I had to find my way here. And that was literally by someone planting a bug in my ear, like, hey, this is what you're doing. And I was telling them like, no, I'm not. I'm just talking about myself and people like it. Or I'm talking about my clients and people like it. And then when I went to school, I was like, oh gosh, I had been doing that from day one. I wish I had known that. But again, being in school doesn't always teach you
interesting.
everything on what to look for. So I landed here by somebody putting that bug in my ear, and then me just deciding, all right, well, let me go back, let me go to school for that before I jump out full time into it.
No, that's very cool. But I also think that's really good advice in itself, right? Because I think so many people get out of high school or even into their early, mid, maybe even late 20s, and they still don't really know what they want to do. And it's hard, right? And they probably have a ton of skills that they just don't know what it's technically called, right?
Right.
Right. And no, that's actually really good advice. So I want to dive a bit deeper into what you guys do at the company, because you guys do something that I think, like I mentioned earlier in the show, that a lot of people probably realize they maybe need, or maybe deep down they know they need, but they don't even know where to start. And that's kind of the whole building your own brand, right? Or whether that's either as yourself as an individual, as yourself with a company, or maybe a combo of both. But what are your thoughts on that, and how do you work with individuals or companies to make that happen?
Okay, yeah. So just the same as you said, most people they know they need it, but they don't quite know what it looks like. And when I say that, I'm definitely referring to branding because we live in a digital age, which we all love.
Sure.
We kind of love to hate it as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different narratives out there on what branding is. So some people just say, hey, I just need to have cool colors, a logo on the website, and boom, I have a brand.
Sure.
And then you get me who comes and kind of interrupts their whole flow and goes, no, you have a piece of a brand. You have some marketing materials.
Sure.
But you don't have a brand because it's not established in a way that makes people realize, hey, this is who you are. This is what you do. This is how you show up in the world. This is how you operate.
Okay.
And so I describe branding, and I'm sure many people have heard this, but it's the connection that people make when they come in contact with you, your website, your logo, your services, but mainly you. What kind of connection do they have? What's the instant feeling that they get?
Okay.
And so your brand is what people know you for.
Sure. So
that has nothing to do with your website or your logo. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going. That's good.
And so a lot of times people, because we live in this fast-paced world, they feel like they can skip the process of building that personal reputation with people, not realizing that really what people think and know of you, that's what your brand is. And most people, they use like Coke as an example, have a Coke and a smile. They know the red and white writing.
Sure.
They know the sound of the Coke can opening. All of those things are associated with Coke. And we know like it's the real thing. There's a Coke phrase or whatnot. And I have to use Coke because I'm from Atlanta.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah.
Go ahead. But that's one of the things that people go, oh, well, that's branding. And I said, okay, well, how do you take that and apply that to you? And so for me, what I've learned from people is that when people hear my name, automatically they think about business, they think about branding, they think about PR, but they think about authenticity and integrity, because they know like, okay, she's going to tell me the truth, and the truth may hurt, but the truth will also help me.
No, I think that's actually really good advice.
Yeah. And so it took me a minute to actually settle with that, because I'm like, no, I don't want everybody to think that, I'm the big bad business person who hurts you to help you, because that's not always the case. But at the end of the day, I had to realize that's a part of the brand that I've established, where, hey, we're not going to do the Kool-Aid and cotton candy and unicorns. We need to get to the root of the issue so that you can actually grow your business. We have to create or establish the persona that you want to be known as. And we have to get clear on what that looks like and also what that feels like for you, so you don't have to necessarily turn it on and turn it off. You can be your brand all day. So whether you're in an elementary school or you're in a university or you're in a boardroom or the bank, you can be you, and it doesn't seem like you're flip-flopping, if that makes sense.
No, I 100% agree. But how do you figure that out? Because that's really challenging for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be a constant work in progress, tweaking, modifying, or how do you work with companies and clients to actually start that process and kind of make sure their brand kind of grows and stays relevant in today's kind of fast-paced society?
Oh yeah, I do that honestly through storytelling. So a lot of what I do is we having these strategic conversations where, of course I don't work for necessarily a blueprint, because everybody and every company is different. Sure. But there are specific questions that I'm always asking. Let's just say for individuals, I'm always asking, okay, who do you want to be known as?
Right.
Who do you want? What do you want people to know you from? Yes, you may wear a lot of different hats. Like for me, I'm an author, speaker, coach, consultant, a ghostwriter, a publicist, We have social media marketing, digital marketing. Like, I do all these things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I really just want people to know me for being like a communication specialist.
Okay.
And that may look like branding over here. That may look like PR over here. That may be copywriting over there. But at the end of the day, I'm a communicator, and people know that. They just know it in different. They know that in different factors or in different modalities, if I could say that. So they know
Sure.
anything that Maleeka does, it's communicating. It just depends on what they need and how that communication aspect comes out. And so it's always about having the conversation of who are you and who do you want to be known as? And then sometimes we take it a step further. We have to go, why? I have to ask them why. Why do you want to be that person? You know, if everyone has known you as a marketing guru for the past 10 years,
Sure.
and now you want to get away from that, why do you want to get away from that? Did you have an epiphany? Did you have a bad experience? Did you find out that you really knew more than you thought you knew? And that allowed you to grow and expand, because it's a process. Like you said, everything is a process. And since we're always growing, learning, and evolving, we have to be aware of what that process looks like for us. So I do that through a lot of conversations, a lot of asking questions that make people go, I don't really know how to answer that right now. I have to think about that. And I'm like, no, that's good, because that means that that's something you never thought about. And I didn't mention it before, but what made me go back into a full-time entrepreneurship, the last job I had is I worked at a university in career development.
Okay.
And so I worked with anyone from freshmen all the way to the grad.
Okay.
And what happened was that they would come in my office, especially the undergrad, and they had to talk to me in order to actually graduate.
Right. Makes sense. Okay.
And so, like, I was the one that had to check the box in order for them to get their degree.
Okay.
And a lot of times I found that they were working toward these degrees and they weren't passionate about it. It was like, oh, well, my mom told me to be an engineer. And I'm like, well, are you good at math or science? And they said, no, I hate those. I'm like, well, engineering may not be for you. And so I found myself having those conversations over and over again, and then kind of telling them, like, well, you don't have to go to school just so you can get a good job. You know, you can build your own empire. You can do your own thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure this is completely opposite of what the university wants me to do.
Sure.
So I think I need to go back, you know, and go back to doing my own thing. It was just, it just kind of got suffocating. It just kind of got suffocating to know that people were so lost.
Yeah.
And they were investing time and money into something that they really didn't want to do. And especially, you know, being in college. And so when you said that it's a process and you learn, you grow, and you change, I was like, I have to make sure I tell him that story, because that's what put me back on the map to going, you know what, I'm going back to doing my things full time, because I really want to help people, save them time and money.
Sure. No, I think that's actually really interesting. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, because I find, like, I'm 36, just to have some context. I've been in tech a long time, a couple decades now, and sometimes people come to me and say, "Oh, you're so lucky that you figured out so early on what you wanted to do in life." And I am, and don't get me wrong, but I still sometimes feel like I have no idea what I'm still doing, right? And that, like, the only thing I'm qualified to do is this, like, what I've been doing for a couple of decades.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary in itself, right? That and it recently happened to me in the last year. I was kind of done with being a designer and being on the design side. And I've always kind of led teams doing design. And it's like, well, if I want to leave this, I don't know anything else. I don't know. I'm not trained for anything else. I don't know how to, there's nothing I'm really more qualified to do. And maybe the only other thing I'm qualified to do is ask you if you want to upsize your combo. You know what I mean? Like, and so how do you work with people that have maybe been doing something for so long that are either trying to make sure they stay passionate about it, either maybe work on changing themselves, or figure out kind of where they want to go? Because I think that in itself is, you mentioned earlier, is they're tied to this specific brand that people see them, but they may be struggling with that, or they don't really know where to take it from there. Do you know what I'm getting at, or is that kind of a
Yes,
long-winded question?
No, that's a perfect question, because just using you as an example, you've been in this design area for so long, but I
Sure.
heard you say that you've led teams in that, and I'm pretty sure you worked on a million different projects. So
Yep.
immediately I thought of, what soft skills or transferable skills did you use while you were doing design, while you were leading teams? Because we all know leading teams is hard.
Sure.
Being a leader
Yeah.
is hard, because you have to have a certain level of emotional intelligence. You actually have to be able to connect with people exactly where they are. You have to be able to, cast the same vision to 50 people and hope that everybody's on the same page.
Sure.
And so, even though you've been a designer for that long, I think being also like a leader and a manager in that space, there are a lot of skills that you had to use that you can then branch out and say, hey, I want to now be maybe a design consultant and consult people on how to have design teams and how to make them more efficient. Because I think that goes into a visual aspect.
Sure.
On like the psychology, on how designing happens, why colors are chosen, why things are placed in a certain area. Because I think for creatives, and I like to call us creatives,
Sure.
because that's what we are.
Yep.
Some things we just get. We don't
Yep.
have to study the psychology of branding colors. We don't have to study making things visual appealing. We just get it and we just do it. And then you have people who studied it, who, when they meet us, who are just naturally creative, who are trying to say, well, if you think about the psychology of it, and we're like, no, this is just great because this is what I created. And so I think even in that, you just have to, when people are looking to do something else, it's a matter of, hey, what skill have I been using for decades?
Sure.
That can be applied to other things outside of direct designing.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. And I think it gets people thinking, though, hopefully about them and maybe what they're going through. But the other thing I want to cover that you mentioned before we started recording is getting your brand to resonate with the different age ranges of people. I know we talked about kind of, I think I'm just a millennial, I guess. So I understand some of the millennial stuff. Others is completely foreign to me and probably everywhere in between. But I'm curious to know, how do you work with companies or individuals to actually make sure that their brand resonates with all their target demographics? Because obviously something that resonates with somebody in their maybe 50s or 60s is going to be different than somebody that's a teenager or in their 20s.
Oh, yes, absolutely. A lot of times what happens in business, and I'm sure you've encountered it, especially if you've done any like one-on-one work with people, you go, okay, well, who's your target market? Oh, I want to sell to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, no, that's not how this works. For me, I honestly feel like I've just been blessed and fortunate to where the personal brand that I've built literally attracts everyone.
Okay.
I always said I wanted to work specifically with millennials.
Okay.
But guess what? 75% of my clientele are Gen Y and boomers almost.
Right.
Like, they're not millennials. And I actually don't even attract a lot of millennials. And some people are like, that's because you're intimidating. But, whatever. But when I'm working with people, and I don't think it's a matter of me just being intimidating. It's just, I know what I know, and I'm confident in what I know.
Yeah.
And it comes off that way. And it's like, when you come to work with me or, to chit chat with me, I want you to show up with that same type of energy.
Gotcha.
Be confident in what you know. And when you don't know, say that you don't know.
Sure.
And that goes back to how people can build brands that resonate with their target, but also just resonates with people in general. You just got to be really confident in what you know.
Sure.
And the way millennials absorb information is completely different than how, a baby boomer, like my grandmother,
Sure.
absorbs information. Of course, they use technology now because they have to, but they're more, hey, let's sit down and have a phone call. And millennials are like, no, just send that in a text message or email. Yeah. And so when it comes to reaching your target audience, you have to know like where they are. I believe across the board, everybody is on their phones these days.
Sure.
Period.
Yep.
And so it's, how do you condense your information that you want to share in a way that people can quickly consume it without being overwhelmed, with clearly getting your message, with clearly knowing how to reach out to you, who you are, those types of things.
Sure.
But I think in order to do that, again, I have to say it goes back to that clarity aspect and knowing who you are, who you want to serve, and how you want to serve them, whether it's by selling, your body butters, if it's, designing a website for them or designing marketing collateral, if it's ghostwriting and writing speeches for people. You have to know who you actually want to do that for. So you may say, I just want to work with politicians. I want to do, political marketing or whatever. Then 9 times out of 10, you're not really trying to talk to a lot of millennials.
Sure.
You probably want to talk to more established people who've been doing it for, people that are already engulfed in that culture, if you really want to get yourself ahead. Or you can say, I want to work with up and coming politicians.
Okay.
So then your target may be millennials. And then it's, okay, I got to make sure I can communicate with them. I have to see what the climate is. And you always have to know what's going on in the industry. And so I think that goes back to knowing your audience, goes back to researching. And really, I don't even want to say researching the way that I would for my doctoral degree, where I'm trying to absorb all this information. Sometimes it's as simple as watching the news or reading the Wall Street Journal just to see, okay, what's going on the stock market, or what's going on in in Washington, D.C., and only paying attention sometimes to those things. Because you get a lot of information, honestly, just by swiping on social media sometimes. Everything you need is kind of at your fingertips. And so if you want to know how to properly position yourself to reach those audiences, you have to know where they are and what type of information they like to consume. Case in point, a lot of clients that come to me, for PR, they're like, I want to, get mentioned in Forbes, and I want to be on the New York Times. And they have, of course, these big hopes, dreams, and aspirations. And I ask, but what will that actually do for you? Do the clients that you serve, do they even read the Wall Street Journal, or do they even read the New York Times? Why do you want that credibility? They're like, well, automatically people will see me as an expert. But if your target audience does not read those things, it does nothing for you.
Interesting.
That's kind of just a little nugget on that PR side, because I think a lot of times they just think PR is just, personal branding on steroids. Everybody needs to talk about me. But I'm like, no, there's a lot of strategy that goes behind that, because it's all about reaching your target audience. So it's not just pitching and hoping whoever opens it and they decide, to write on you or use your quote. It's about making sure you connect also with the platforms that the people that you want to work with are actually reading, or they're actually engaged with those platforms as well.
No, that's actually really good advice, because that's got to be a bit of a hard sell to certain age groups and people if they're trying to target a different age group, right? Because I think the older generations are like, well, of course I want to be on the cover of Time magazine or the New York Times or something like that. But if your target market's 20-year-old, well, they're probably not reading either one of those markets, right?
Right.
And sure, your friends might think it's cool, but if that doesn't really generate you new business, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I never really thought of it like that, right?
And I don't think most people do, because it's more, you need publicity just to get the word out there, to boost your credibility and hope it brings you more money. But I'm like, if you do it, if the work is done strategically, which is how we operate, then we make sure that you're in the perfect position. It's not like we don't want you to be everywhere, because honestly, being everywhere kind of means that you're nowhere.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it's a matter of, again, going back to that branding aspect of who the people that resonate with you or connect with you, people. How do we reach them? What are they reading? Like I had one of my clients in her 70s. She's written 4 books, literally, since she was 70, like over the span of 5 years. So I tell people it's never too late to start. But I was telling them, why would I then possibly pitch her books about, kind of, well, some of them are like really spicy novels, but like her autobiography about her life. Why would I pitch that to Cosmo? She's a 70-year-old great grandmother, African-American woman. We're not, very spiritual. Why would I then pitch her to Cosmo?
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
Completely different audience. completely different readership. Do I want to pitch her just to say, oh, she's been in Cosmo? To her audience or her demographics, they'll be like, what? That doesn't even make sense. You know, we'd have to really spin that angle to make it work.
Sure.
But it doesn't work. But I would, you know, maybe pitch her to a Huff Post as saying, you know, it's never too late to start. Meet the author who's written 5 books, you know, at the age of 70, you know, that type of thing. You know, she started writing when she was like 69. And most people think, oh, if by the time I hit 50, it's too late. If I haven't done it, it's too late. I'm old now. And I'm like, no, it's never too late. It's never too late to kind of reinvent yourself. And if you wake up tomorrow and decide, hey, I don't want to be this Maleeka anymore. I don't want to do branding and PR. I want to do something else. Honestly, it'll be really easy for me to switch.
Sure. No, fair enough.
because I know what skills I have that I can do anything with. And then I also know how to start over from scratch. I'm really good at that. Like, I can make something out of nothing. And I think most people can. They just don't trust themselves to do so.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, it's a confidence thing, right? I feel, and it sounds like you would agree with this, that even people on the show, and I've tried to talk about this before, is even people that have been extremely successful still feel the anxiety of failure, and they still fail all the time. And failure doesn't have to be such a negative thing. It can be little failures every day, right? That it's how many times you just keep going at it and figuring it out and trying new things. And it sounds really kind of stupid, but until you actually go through it a few times and just kind of trust the process and just go for it one day, you don't really understand what it truly kind of means. Do you agree with that, or what are your thoughts around that?
I agree 100% with that. One thing I always tell myself, I actually may need to just tell this more often to my clients and other people, is I never say that I lose. I'm like, I'm not a loser. I'm a winner.
Sure.
Either it's never a loss. It's always a lesson.
Sure.
And some people, I say you can either look at it as a loss or you can look at it as a lesson. For me, I look at everything as a learning opportunity.
Sure.
Business is like a circle or a cycle or a pattern or a process of literally testing and tweaking over and over again. You know, most people think that, well, you know, I did this launch one time and it didn't work. It didn't get the results. And I'm like, okay, well, what did you do? So I tried to do something else. No, you fix the parts that didn't work and you do it again.
Yeah.
And then you fix the parts that didn't work and you do it again. That's how you actually build confidence in what you do, is by practicing and being repetitive and doing it over and over again. Especially with the online business space, there's this narrative of, I tried it one time and I made $1 million,
sure,
and now I can teach you how to do it. And I'm like, I those kind of narratives irritate me.
Sure.
Only because I believe that everybody is given their own kind of internal blueprint
sure,
to work from and to how to do business. And when you try to take what somebody else did and just put your name on it and it doesn't work, and you're like, well, it worked for them. Well, that's because that was their blueprint.
Yeah.
That was their process. You can't just take somebody's process and copy and paste, you know, copy and paste your name and your ideas and think that it's going to work. You have to go through your own process. And that's where you build like that grit, the hustle, the tenacity, the confidence that you need to be able to be flexible as a person, but also in business, to where you're like, okay, well, that didn't work this time. Let me fix some things. Let me try it again until it does work. I think you said earlier in the recording, you was like, even though you've been doing what you've been doing for decades, you still have moments where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
I have those same moments. And I'm sure if we all be honest, I think we all do. Totally. I tell people, the experts and the guru that you're praying and hoping and paying them to help you, guess what? They're still figuring it out too.
Yep. It's just a different set of problems, right?
Yes.
And I don't mean, again, problem is like a negative thing. It's just like, if we're all trying to figure out what our next move's going to be. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, the more successful you've been in the past, the more you're either trying to ride that for the rest of your career, or you're trying to get away from that as far as possible, and because you want to be known for the new thing you're working on, or you're trying to build something that was just as successful, or at least, or maybe more successful as the stuff you've done in the past, which I think in a lot of cases people don't realize adds way more stress than the person that's maybe making a good living. Like, I had a guy on the show years ago, a couple of times, that he sold a company to BlackBerry. He sold a company to a couple other places. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars and still feels completely like an imposter and that somebody's going to figure him out. And you're like, well, if a guy like that, who in a lot of cases, the tech startup type entrepreneur, want to be that guy, like everybody's shooting for that guy, whether you're male, female, you're shooting to be that successful. And he is that successful, and he still has the same issues and problems and struggles that all the rest of us are feeling every day, that don't have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank account. There's just really no hope that you'll ever get over that, or right? Because you just need to figure out what makes you happy, because even if you attain all that, you're still going to have the same insecurities and feelings, because most people that get that successful still struggle with the same stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Which is wild to me, and it was really eye-opening.
Yeah, I think that, and then like a lot of people that are just starting and who would look up to someone like him. Yeah. Of course, we're all like, how did you do it? Teach us the secret sauce or whatnot. Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize is that he had to go through that same process that we're all going through. Yeah. And since he's had so much success, now his process is probably 10 times harder than what we have. And when you were telling his story, automatically I thought about Ariana Huffington. Yeah, how she started the Huffington Post, and it was going and going, and then she was like, oh, okay, now I'm going to go do Thrive Global, and it's all about balance and well-being and getting sleep. And it's like, wait a minute. What? You're going to let go? Or I think she's still on the board, but it's like, you're really going to step away from like your namesake to do something completely different? And she's like, yeah, this is where I am right now. And I think a lot of people are afraid because they're like, can I really do it again? Can I really build this massive empire again? But I'm like, Ariana is sure of herself. Yeah. She like, I did this and it worked. So I know I can do it again. This is what I want to focus on now. I believe that we can all make that same decision, but we really have to get out of our own heads. And one way I like to tell people to do that, to get out of your own heads, just ask people. I say, well, make a social media post and ask people based off what they see you post and whatnot, or based off of your website. What does it do they think that you do? Sure. And I'm like, see what the response is. But that also lets you know how well of a job you're doing in promoting yourself or promoting your business. Because, for me, I'm in PR and branding, but if everybody keeps talking about how great of a writer I am on social media, or how great I leverage social media, then I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. What narrative am I really telling you all? Even though I know I am good at it. But it's just that thing of you have to figure out, okay, what am I from a day-to-day basis, me being a human being, how am I showing up in the world and how are people receiving that? And I think the more people get clear on that and they ask, because you'll never know if you don't ask. And they ask people, what do you get from me? And people are kind of validating that. That also lets you know, hey, I'm not so far from the right path. Like, I'm doing something right. Even if everything isn't 100% aligned the way I want it to, at least something is working so I can keep going.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. The other thing that you touched on that I find really interesting about that is people are scared to ask for anything. I found a lot of people say, well, I can't just ask. It's like, well, what do you mean you can't just ask? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right?
Right, yeah. Immediately what came to mind is I feel like, well, when people get in trouble, they have no problem praying and asking for the divine to help them.
Interesting. So, I never thought of it like that.
Why, when you get in trouble, you're like, or you get sick, it's like, God, universe, somebody help me fix this. My family, is breaking up. You have no problem praying and asking for what you need. So why not take that same, energy and put that in front of people. I don't know how much you've been on social media, how much you had time, but on Facebook, there's been this copy and paste message that people are doing, saying, hey, I don't know if you know, but I have my own business, and they plug their business name. I just want you to support me by donating $1 to my business to get me a little momentum.
Okay.
And it really irritated me because I'm like, wow, you're using the ask that you have to ask for $1. When you could easily make that post and say, hey, I'm working on building my business and I need 5 people to test my service or to test my product on.
Sure.
Can you be one of those people?
Sure.
The price is $100 instead of $1.
Fair enough.
People are afraid to ask in a way. And honestly, I think they're afraid to ask because they're just afraid of being told no. But when you know your numbers, like for me, I know if I talk to 5 people today, at least three out of those 5, I'm going to close based on me tracking it. And so I'm like, oh, somebody just told me no. All right, well, I need to replace that person because I know that my rate is 3 out of 5. People are afraid of being told no. And I feel like sometimes no definitely means no.
Yeah.
And sometimes no means not right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
And when you,
keep going. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and when you look at it that way, and it's like people are not rejecting you. They just don't want or need what you have right now in this moment as of today. It's the same way as if you have a house, you know that plumbers exist, but you don't go looking for referrals until your toilet explodes.
Yeah, totally. No, fair enough. That's actually a really good way of putting it.
And so I know from my business, I like to say I have PR is a luxury service because if you do your business right, you wouldn't need me, Of course, I have skills that you do need and that I would love to share with everyone. But at the end of the day, if you have all the pieces 100% aligned, which is really hard to do, you don't need a publicist. Because the work that you do, your clients, your results will speak for you to make people come to you. But at the end of the day, I also understand that sometimes I have to show people that, hey, you actually do need me because you have all the pieces. You need me to do the work that you don't have that you don't have time to do.
Sure.
And even if, I get told no all the time.
Sure.
But for me, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep watching you because that's what I do. I kind of low key people that I want to work with or companies that I want to work with.
Sure.
But it's like, no, I'll keep watching you.
Yep.
And when the next perfect moment presents itself, trust and believe, I'm going to ask again. And I'm not attached to whether you say yes or no. If you say yes, great, let's work. If you say no, okay, well, on to the next, you know?
No, that's actually a really good point because I've literally got everything that I've ever gotten career-wise just by asking. I've gotten told no more times than I can remember. I've probably got not written back to more times than that. But if you never ask, you will never know. And you don't have to necessarily be pushy about it. Like I've told the story a million times before, but just for people that haven't heard it, even just getting the show, I literally got asked to be on somebody else's show. I literally wrote back, look, I'm not what you're looking for, but is anybody else at the station or is the station looking for any other new shows? Let me know, and if you could pass me along to the station. And I never even knew the lady. We were just LinkedIn connections, and she sent, here's the station's email, have at her. And I never would have been doing the show for 4 years if I never just asked, right? I'm sure we both have tons of stories that we could probably fill another hour with of times where we asked and nothing came of it and times where we've asked and you're like, wow, that actually worked out.
Yeah. And sometimes you ask for a little and then somebody ends up just giving you a lot and you're like, well, did I ask for too small? I never forget one time, I pitched a client for something.
Okay.
And we got to the end where it was, the money talk.
Yeah.
And, I said the price, it was something along the lines of, I was like, oh, and that's, the price of it is it was like $3,500 or something.
Okay.
And they and me like, oh yeah, that's doable. Let me go ahead and send me the invoice. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Hold on, and because it was my first time even putting a number out there like that. But for me, that just taught me, stop thinking small. Stop thinking that just because the number may be big to everyone you've been working with for the past 3 years,
Yeah.
that it's to some people or to some organizations, that's not a big number. That's like, I don't want to say chump change because it's not, but it was, oh, that's easy to pay. And I was sitting there thinking like, oh man, I should have doubled that if I would have known it was going to be so easy. But I think sometimes we get stuck in our own heads to feel like, well, I don't know enough. I haven't been doing enough. I don't have enough logos or credibility under my belt to be able to, to charge $500 for a service.
Sure.
But I believe if we were able to get out of that mindset, I think it's always going to creep back up. I think it's just a part of life. But if we're able to just take one day out of the week where it's like, I'm going to have like all the guts in the world and I'm just going to go for it today. Like, this is the only day of the week I'm going to be this bold and ask every person that I want to talk to, and they're going to say yes. I think if we can get in the habit of doing that at least one day a week, like, everything about what we do would change.
Yeah, interesting. That's actually really good advice. So we're kind of coming to the end of the show, but I really want to get your kind of thoughts on where do you kind of see the industry going? Because there seems to be a bit of backlash against social media, but Facebook and all these other companies seem to be recording record profits. So clearly people aren't leaving the platforms because of the good, bad, and other publicity they've been getting. But what are your thoughts on the state of the industry right now?
I would say on social media as a whole, and these days a lot of part of PR and branding has to do with social media. I think that what's happening is it's not necessarily that people are going away from it; they're just changing the way in which they use it.
Okay.
Because at first it was more about personal connections and keeping in contact with family, friends, following up with people that you probably went to school with in high school. But now it's becoming more of a business-driven platform. That's why these companies are making money, and people are starting to pay attention to that.
Okay.
I don't think social media is going away anytime soon. I just think the way in which we're continuing to use it will change. I think it will become more business-driven over time. But I also think that because everything is so business-driven, it leaves room for some kid in his dorm room to invent the new type of Facebook that's only about personal connection.
Interesting.
For the people that only want that. I don't know who said it. It's some big known celebrity in the tech space or something. But they said, I'm not afraid of the next big tech company to come along and, take my idea and make it better. I'm afraid of that kid that's sitting in his bed on his dorm room that's about to invent the next big thing that's going to wipe me out.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because that's what happened. So I think that what happens is kind of, since we all have that feel like, oh no, I just want social media just to be social again. I don't really want to do it for business, or I don't want to see all these sponsored ads all the time. I think something will come along to satisfy that group of people.
Sure.
But for us, who are like, this is an amazing business tool, it is an amazing exposure tool, it's a way to make money and extend my reach, I think we'll just keep using it in that way, and they'll keep creating opportunities for us as well as, the companies to capitalize, off of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's interesting, right? Because I think it's such a different mindset, right? And posting to the different channels is you really need to tweak your content and change it quite a bit. Obviously, you can't post a really long piece on Twitter, right?
Right.
So obviously you need to change the same content, but it's interesting, and just getting your head around the platforms that work really well for you and have your target audience, and then quitting the platforms that don't work and don't have your target audience. I think some people even struggle with that. Everybody's like, just post to everywhere. It's like, well, yeah, it's so tricky, right? That's my experience anyway with it.
Yeah. For me, like, I think I've always just spent more time on Facebook because, I don't know, more engagement.
Okay.
But for the past year, I've started paying more attention to LinkedIn.
Okay.
And the way I deliver the message. So with Facebook, it's a little bit more clever and kind of less formal. But on LinkedIn, I sometimes deliver the same message, but I just change the wording,
Sure.
and I still get a great response.
Sure.
Like my connections shot up last year.
That's good.
And I was like, gosh, what just happened? But I was never tapped into the platform because, the narrative was like, oh, LinkedIn is just for business executives. And I'm like, that's not true, because I'm sure there are not 8 billion business executives. There has to be somebody else using that platform.
Sure.
But I've been able to generate a lot of buzz and get clients from LinkedIn.
That's awesome.
Kind of using the same messaging, but just tweaking it to where it's less carefree that I would use on Facebook, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. But we're out of time, so let's close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and any other links you want to mention.
Yeah, so absolutely. My website is MaleekaHollaway.com, and that's MaleekaHollaway. If you type the O instead of A, you won't get me. That is my website. All across all social media platforms, my handle is @officialmaleeka. That's OFFICIALMALEEKA. And literally anything that I'm doing, anything that my clients are doing, any new initiatives that we have going on right now, you will be able to find them. I like to tell people, just Google me and you'll be able to find me. It is me answering my emails most of the time. It's me in my inbox on social media most of the time.
Sure.
But I'm very accessible, and I love to meet and help people any way I possibly can.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it, and you do the same.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.